The fight started before she even got fully out of her car. I was on a ladder by the front porch, trying to finish a crooked section of trim before dark, when Riley slammed her door hard enough to make me look up. She stood there in heels that kept sinking into the dirt by the driveway, staring at my house like it had personally offended her. "Seriously?" she said. "It still looks like this?" I climbed down slow, already tired, already knowing where it was going. "Hey to you too." She folded her arms and looked past me at the patched siding, the stack of lumber near the steps, the old pickup parked by the shed. "Evan, it's been months. Every time I come here, it looks like a different version of unfinished." I set the hammer on the porch rail. "That's because I'm doing it myself. That's exactly the problem." She said it loud. Not joking, not teasing. Loud enough that it bounced off the porch ceiling and out into the yard. I wiped my hands on my jeans. "You knew what this place was when I bought it." "I knew you said it had potential," she shot back. "I didn't know potential meant me standing in mud while my boyfriend plays construction worker every weekend." That hit harder than I wanted it to. I looked at her for a second, hoping she'd soften, maybe hear herself, maybe back off. She didn't. "I'm not playing anything," I said. "I'm fixing my house." She gave a sharp laugh. "Your house, right? The one with plastic over one of the windows and a kitchen that looks like somebody quit halfway through a disaster." I felt my jaw tighten. The kitchen window really did have plastic over it because I still hadn't replaced the cracked pane. I'd been meaning to do it the next weekend. There was always a next weekend. "You don't have to like it," I said. "But you don't need to talk to me like that. I'm talking to you like somebody has to be honest with you." I should have walked away then. I know that now. But when you've been trying to keep something together, you keep reaching for calm even after calm has stopped helping. "So be honest," I said. "What are you really mad about?" Her face changed. Not softer, sharper. "I'm mad that you're 25 and living like a man twice your age with no plan. I'm mad that every conversation about the future turns into you talking about paint, pipes, and roof shingles. I'm mad that my friends keep asking why we never go anywhere nice, and I have to act like this is temporary when you clearly love living like this." The words just sat there between us. I looked out toward the road for a second because it was easier than looking at her. "So that's what this is. You're embarrassed." She hesitated, but only for a second. "I'm tired, Evan. I'm tired of pretending this is enough." That one landed clean. The porch suddenly felt too small. The open front door behind me, the tools on the steps, the half-finished railing, all of it felt exposed. Like she hadn't just insulted the house. Like she'd stripped the life out of it and held it up in front of me. "I never asked you to pretend," I said quietly. She tossed her hair back and looked toward the street like she couldn't even stand being there anymore. "You shouldn't need this much time to become somebody." That was the line that did it. Not because it was the cruelest thing she'd said. Because I realized she meant it. I stared at her and saw the last few months in a way I hadn't wanted to before. Every comment about my truck. Every joke about my work boots. Every little push about money. Better neighborhoods, better furniture, better plans, better everything. It was never just about the house. The house was proof that I was still becoming, and she wanted somebody already finished. She stepped closer and lowered her voice like that somehow made it kinder. "I just want more for us." I laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. "No, you want more from me." She looked offended, which almost made me angry enough to say something mean back. Instead, I just stepped around her, picked up my hammer, and went back to the porch. "Are you serious?" she said. "Yeah," I said. "I'm serious." She stood there another 10 seconds, maybe waiting for me to chase her, maybe waiting for me to apologize for not being richer, faster, shinier. Then she turned, got back in her car, and peeled out of the driveway hard enough to kick dust over the grass. The silence after that felt strange. Not peaceful exactly, just empty in a way that let me hear my own thoughts again. A minute later, I heard a voice from the other side of the fence. "Well," she said, "if the trim survives tonight, it deserves a medal." I looked over and saw Chloe leaning one arm on the fence post between our yards, holding a mug in both hands. She lived in the gray house next door. I knew that much. We'd waved before, traded maybe 10 words total in the months I'd been there. She was older than me by enough that I'd always been careful around that fact, though I couldn't have said why. She carried herself in a way that made people act normal around her or not at all. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "You heard that?" She lifted one eyebrow. "I heard enough to know I picked the wrong time to water my tomatoes." That made me smile before I could stop it. "Sorry," I said. "Don't apologize to me." She took a sip from her mug, then looked at the porch. "You actually doing all that yourself?" "Trying to. It shows." I winced. "That bad?" She shook her head. "No. I meant the effort shows. There's a difference." I didn't say anything right away. I wasn't used to somebody looking at this place and seeing work instead of failure. A second later, she held up the extra mug in her hand. "Coffee. I made too much. Unless your evening plan is rage and sawdust." I actually laughed that time. "Coffee sounds better." She came around through the side gate and handed me the mug like it was the most normal thing in the world. No pity in her face. No curiosity that felt invasive. Just calm. The coffee was hot, strong, and way better than what I made for myself. "Thanks," I said. Chloe glanced toward the road where Riley had disappeared, then back at me. "For what it's worth, the house has good bones." I looked at the warped porch, the scraped paint, the open toolbox by my boot. "That what you tell everybody after public humiliation?" "No," she said, smiling a little. "Usually I charge for emotional repair work." I laughed again, and this time it felt unfamiliar in the best way. Easy. Like my shoulders had dropped without permission. We stood there a minute longer with the evening air settling in around us. And for the first time all day, nothing felt like a test. When she finally started back toward her yard, she looked over her shoulder and said, "Don't work too late, Evan. Some things look better in the morning." I watched her go, coffee warm in my hand, and stared at the half-finished house in front of me. 5 minutes earlier it had felt like proof that I was failing. Now, standing there in the quiet she left behind, it felt like mine. If this is hitting different, hit subscribe and drop a like. Takes 2 seconds. A couple days after that fight, Riley acted like nothing had happened. She sent me a picture of some rooftop bar downtown with the message, "We should go somewhere like this Friday." No apology. No mention of what she'd said. Just that. Like I was supposed to jump right back into pretending. I stared at the message while standing in my kitchen with one cabinet door off its hinges and a sandwich in my hand. The plastic was still over the cracked window. The sink still had a slow drip. Nothing in my life had magically turned into the version she wanted in 48 hours. I wrote back, "Busy Friday. Working on the house." She left me on read for an hour, then answered, "Of course you are." My girlfriend humiliated me in the driveway and still expected me to show up for her. Would you have texted back? Or cut it off right there? Tell me below. That one line sat in my chest way longer than it should have. Later that evening, I was outside trying to get an old porch light working when Chloe came back from the store with 2 paper bags in her arms. She saw me leaning half inside the fixture and smiled. "You fixing it?" she said. "Or having a personal argument with it?" "Little of both," I said. She laughed and shifted one of the bags against her hip. "I had an uncle who used to fix everything by staring at it until it got nervous." "Did it work?" "Not once." I climbed down off the step stool and reached for one of the bags without even thinking. "Here, I got it." She let me take it. "Thank you." That was the first thing I noticed about her. She never made a big performance out of simple things. If I helped, she let me help. If she offered something, she offered it like it was normal, not like we were keeping score. I carried the bags to her porch and set them down by the door. One had bread sticking out of the top and a bunch of green onions. She unlocked the door, then glanced at me. "You eaten?" "Kind of." "That sounds like a no." I smiled. "I had a sandwich." She gave me a look. "That's not dinner. That's surrender." I laughed and leaned one shoulder against the porch post. "I'm surviving." "Terrible strategy." She pushed her door open and looked back at me. I made too much soup. Again. Give me 10 minutes. I should have said no. I knew I should have. Riley was still Riley. Chloe was still my neighbor. Everything still had lines around it. Instead I said, "You need help with anything?" She thought for a second, then nodded toward the side of her porch. "Actually, yes. That screen door has been sticking all week and I'm one bad mood away from taking it off the hinges." So I stayed. The door needed less work than she thought. A loose screw, a little sanding near the bottom edge, a quick adjustment on the latch. 15 minutes, maybe 20. Chloe stood nearby with her arms folded, watching me with that calm half-smile she always had when something amused her. "You make that look easy," she said. "It's only easy because it's not my house." "That bad in there?" I glanced toward mine and let out a breath. "Depends what day you ask." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "I don't think you give yourself enough credit." That hit me in a weird place because it was so simple. No speech, no big moment, just a sentence I didn't hear very often. I shrugged it off because I didn't know what else to do with it. "Well, if you say that after seeing my bathroom, then I'll know you mean it." She smiled. Careful. I might take that as an invitation. There was nothing heavy in the way she said it, but I still felt it. Just enough to notice. She disappeared inside, and when she came back, she handed me a bowl and a spoon and nodded toward the 2 chairs on her porch. We sat there with the evening settling over both yards, and I had the best meal I'd had in weeks while she told me about a guy at the store who spent 5 full minutes choosing between 2 identical melons like the choice would change his future. I laughed more than I expected to. That was the second thing I noticed about her. Around Chloe, I never felt like I was auditioning for my own life. After that, the small things started piling up. I helped her move a heavy shelf she'd been meaning to shift for months. She handed me coffee over the fence one morning when she saw me already outside with a tape measure before 8. I changed a bulb in her hallway fixture that was too high for her to bother with. She brought over a plate one night when she caught me still working under a drop light after dark. "Eat before you turn into drywall dust," she said, and none of it felt forced. That was the dangerous part. Meanwhile, every conversation with Riley felt like I was walking into a room where I was already losing. She came by one Saturday afternoon in sunglasses and a mood I could spot from the driveway. She stepped into the living room, looked around at the paint cans, the folded tarp in the corner, the old record player I'd found at a yard sale and cleaned up, and just sighed. "You actually like this," she said. I looked up from the floor where I was fitting trim along the wall. "Like what?" "This." She waved her hand around. "This whole rough, unfinished old man project version of life." I stood up slow. "You say that like it's disgusting." "I say it like I don't understand why you're so attached to struggling." That word stayed with me after she left. Not attached to the house. Not attached to the work. Attached to struggling. Like effort and failure were the same thing. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer I barely wanted and heard music drifting from Chloe's place. Nothing loud. Just an old song playing through an open window. A minute later her porch light clicked on, and she stepped outside in a loose sweater, saw me and smiled like she was actually glad I was there. "You look like you're thinking too hard," she said. "Bad habit." "Come sit over here," she said. "My porch is less tragic." So I went. We sat there talking about nothing important at first. Music. Bad landlords. The weird smell that came every spring from the drainage ditch near the corner. Then somehow we got into real things without either of us pushing it. She asked how long I'd wanted a place of my own. I told her about saving for years, about wanting something I could build with my own hands, even if it took time. She listened the whole way through, didn't interrupt, didn't correct me, didn't turn it into a lecture about where I should already be. When I finally stopped talking, she looked at me for a second and said, "That sounds like a man building a life, not wasting one." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, because by then I knew the truth, even if I hadn't said it out loud yet. The problem wasn't that I was confused between 2 women. The problem was that one of them made me feel smaller every time she opened her mouth, and the other made me feel like I could finally breathe. The end came on a Tuesday, which somehow made it worse. Not because Tuesdays mean anything. Just because I always thought a breakup like that would happen after some huge build-up, some final explosion you could point to and say, there, that was it. Instead it started with me in the backyard trying to line up a new set of porch boards while Riley stood 3 feet away in sunglasses, looking around like she'd been dropped somewhere beneath her standards. She hadn't come over to see me. Not really. She'd come over to complain in person. I passed Madison and Troy at brunch on Sunday, she said. They asked when I was finally going to move in with you. I kept my tape measure hooked on the board. Okay. Do you know how stupid I felt? That made me look up. Because somebody asked you a normal question? Because I had to act like this place is temporary. I set the board down. You keep saying that word. Because it should be temporary, Evan. The way she said my name made it sound like I was slow. Like she was explaining the world to me for the 100th time and I was still missing it on purpose. I wiped my hands on my jeans and faced her. Then why are you still here? She gave me that look she always used when she wanted to make herself the reasonable one. Because I keep hoping you'll grow out of this. I laughed once, but nothing in me found it funny anymore. Grow out of what? She turned in a circle with one hand lifted. The house, the yard, the stack of boards, the paint-splattered ladder, the truck by the shed. My whole life, basically. This, she said. This small, tired life where everything is about saving money, fixing junk, and acting proud of things that aren't even done. You could be doing so much better than this, but you're obsessed with living like. She stopped, but too late. I'd already heard enough. Like what? I asked. She looked right at me. Like somebody people make excuses for. That was the moment. Not because it was louder than the other things she'd said. It wasn't. If anything, it was colder. Cleaner. Like she'd stopped trying to soften what she really thought. I felt something in me go still. I'd spent months trying to keep pace with somebody who treated my whole life like a waiting room. Every time I worked harder, it was still not enough. Every time I tried to explain what this place meant to me, she heard delay, not effort. She didn't want the life I was building. She wanted the version of me that appeared after it was already done. And suddenly I was just tired. Tired in a way that felt clear. You need to go, I said. She blinked. What? I'm done, Riley. For a second she honestly looked confused. Like that option had never entered her mind. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm finally being honest. Her face tightened. Over one argument? It's not one argument. It's every time you come here and make me feel like I should be ashamed of my own life. Oh my God. She let out a hard breath and laughed at the sky. You are so sensitive. I almost smiled, because that was always the move when she had nothing real left. Turn it back on me. Make me the problem. Make me weak for hearing the words she fully meant. I shook my head. You don't respect me. You don't respect this place. And you definitely don't respect the life I want. She crossed her arms. Maybe because your life has no ambition. That should have started another fight. Instead it ended one. I stepped past her, opened the front door, and held it there. Take your stuff. She stared at me for a long second, waiting for me to crack. Waiting for me to apologize or chase, or do anything except stand there. I didn't. The next 10 minutes were ugly in that flat, embarrassing way breakups get when one person realizes the other actually means it. She grabbed the sweater she'd left in my bedroom, the makeup bag from the bathroom, the charger by the couch. She said I was making a mistake. She said I'd regret it. She said no woman with options would want to sign up for this life. That one almost got me. Not because I believed it. Because deep down I knew exactly whose face flashed through my mind when she said it. Chloe. Riley saw something change in my expression and narrowed her eyes. Wow, she said quietly. There is somebody else. There isn't, I said. And at that exact moment it was still true. But there was already a place inside me moving away from her and toward peace. Toward ease. Toward the porch next door and the woman who never made me feel like I had to earn basic warmth. Riley left with her jaw tight and her car tires spitting gravel out of the driveway. This time I didn't stand there afterward. I went inside, sat on the edge of my couch in the half-finished living room, and just listened to the silence. Felt different now. Not empty. Open. By evening, I still hadn't done much except drink bad coffee and stare at the wall where I'd been planning to hang shelves. Around sunset, there was a knock at the screen door. Chloe stood there holding a plate covered with foil. "I made too much pasta," she said. Then she looked at my face and added softer. "Or I had a feeling I might." I opened the door and stepped back to let her in. She set the plate down on the counter, looked around once, then looked back at me. "You okay?" That should have been an easy question. It wasn't. I rubbed the back of my neck. "Yeah, no, I don't know. It's over." Chloe nodded slowly, like she understood more than I was saying. "All right." No lecture. No fake surprise. No fishing for details. Just that. I let out a breath. "I thought I'd feel worse. Maybe you felt bad for a long time already." I looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in my chest shifted so fast it almost made me uneasy. We ended up on the porch with 2 plates in our laps and the evening air going cool around us. I told her the shorter version. She listened. Once in a while she asked something simple, but mostly she just sat with me in it. At some point my knee brushed hers under the small metal table between us, and neither of us moved right away. That tiny moment changed the whole air. I looked over. She looked back. Everything that had been sitting quietly between us for weeks was suddenly right there, close enough to touch. "You should probably go inside," I said, and my voice came out lower than I meant it to. "Probably," she said. Neither of us moved. Then she smiled a little, not nervous exactly, just honest. "Evan." The way she said my name did something Riley never could. It didn't push. It invited. I set my plate down first. She did the same. When I leaned in, I gave her enough time to stop me. She didn't. The kiss was soft at first, almost careful, like both of us knew exactly how long we'd been walking around that line. Then it changed. Warmer. Closer. Real in a way nothing else in my life had felt for a long time. When she pulled back, her forehead stayed near mine. "We should be careful," she said. "I know." But even saying it, I knew the truth. I was done being careful for the wrong reason. That night didn't feel wild. Felt certain. And lying there later, with the house finally quiet around me and Chloe close enough that I could hear her breathing, I realized the biggest thing that had changed. I hadn't chosen drama. I had chosen relief. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm and just lay there for a second, staring at the ceiling. Usually my first thought was what needed fixing next. Which board still felt loose, what bill was coming up, what part of the kitchen was still half done. That morning, the first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not the empty kind. The good kind. I got up, pulled on jeans, and walked barefoot into the kitchen. The plate Chloe had brought over was still on the counter, covered again, and there was a coffee mug in the sink that wasn't mine. Just seeing it there did something small and solid in me. I started a pot of coffee and opened the back door for some air. The yard looked the same as always. Crooked fence, patchy grass, lumber stacked by the shed. Nothing had magically changed overnight. But I had. Around 8, I heard a knock at the screen door. Chloe was standing there in a faded t-shirt and loose pants, one hand wrapped around her own mug. "I wasn't sure," she said. "About what?" She smiled a little. "Whether this morning would be awkward." I stepped aside and opened the door wider. "It's not." "No, no." She came in slow, like she was giving me room to change my mind, but I didn't. I poured her coffee into the clean mug from the shelf because I already knew which one she'd probably pick if I asked. Blue ceramic, little chip near the handle. She noticed that too. "You remembered," she said. "Yeah." That one word carried more than I meant it to. We stood in the kitchen for a minute, not rushing to fill the silence. With Riley, silence always felt like danger, like someone was gathering complaints. With Chloe, it just felt easy. She leaned back against the counter and looked toward the window with the plastic still over one side. "You know," she said, "that really is terrible." I laughed. "So now you tell me." I was trying to be supportive. "You did a great job." "I know." I shook my head, smiling, and reached for the toolbox under the table. Actually, I have the new paint in the shed. I was going to do it this weekend. She looked at me over the rim of her mug. This weekend started 5 minutes ago, so that was how the day went. I replaced the window while she held the frame steady and told me I was being too careful. We made grilled cheese in my half-finished kitchen because there wasn't much else in the fridge. She opened drawers like she'd been there before, then paused and laughed at herself. "Too familiar?" she asked. I looked at her standing there barefoot on my old floor, sunlight coming in through the window I'd finally fixed. And the answer came so fast I didn't even need to think. "No," I said. "Not even a little." By the afternoon, we were sitting on the floor in the living room with paint samples spread out beside us. That had been my plan for weeks, and somehow it had never happened. Chloe took it completely seriously too, which made it funnier. "This one," she said, holding up a strip, "looks like a waiting room. That's not a color. It is in spirit." I laughed and took it from her. "You're impossible, and yet helpful." We kept going like that, moving from room to room, talking about paint, shelves, curtains, stupid little things that should have felt boring. They didn't. That was the part one couldn't get over. Nothing about the day was dramatic. No huge speech. No big scene. Just ordinary life, and for once ordinary life felt better than anything loud ever had. At one point I found an old radio in the hallway closet, still dusty from when I'd shoved it in there after moving in. I plugged it in, smacked the side once, and music crackled out. Chloe laughed so hard at that she had to sit down on the arm of the couch. "You fix everything like a mechanic from 1987, she said. "And it worked. Barely. Still counts." She stayed until evening without either of us really deciding she would. I ordered takeout because my stove still only worked when it felt like it, and we ate on the back porch while the air cooled down and the sky went orange over the trees behind the fence. At some point she leaned her head lightly against my shoulder. That was it. That was the moment everything settled. Not the night before. Not the breakup. Not even the first kiss. Her sitting beside me in the fading light with an empty takeout container on her lap. My house still rough around the edges. The porch boards not even fully finished yet. And me feeling more sure than I ever had in my life. Because I finally understood what had been missing. It was never money. It was never speed. It was never some shinier version of me. It was peace. Real peace. The kind that didn't make you perform. The kind that didn't treat love like leverage. The kind that made a half-fixed house feel full. Chloe lifted her head and looked at me. "What?" I hadn't realized I was staring. "Nothing," I said at first. Then I shook my head. "No, that's not true." She waited. I set my food down on the porch step and turned toward her fully. I spent so much time thinking I was behind. Like I was always one step away from becoming somebody good enough for the life I wanted. Her face softened, but she didn't interrupt. "And now," I said, "I'm sitting here with you, and this is the first time any of it has felt right." She looked down for a second, then back at me. "Evan." I smiled. "Yeah, I know." "No," she said, smiling too. "I just wanted to hear you say it. So I did. I told her I wanted this. Not the mess I'd just left. Not the constant pressure. Not another round of trying to keep somebody who only liked me in theory. I wanted her. I wanted the easy way she walked into my day and made it better. I wanted the nights on the porch, the coffee, the dumb jokes, the feeling that I could build my life without apologizing for the pace of it. And Chloe, calm as ever, just reached for my hand and held it like she already knew. A little later we went back inside because the air had turned cool. She curled up against me on the couch while the radio kept playing low in the background, and I looked around that half-done living room with the patched walls and paint samples and tools still sitting out. A week earlier it had looked unfinished. Now it looked like the start of something. That was the whole truth of it. The wrong kind of love had always made me feel like I was chasing permission to exist. Like I had to hurry up and become more, earn more, prove more, shine more, just to keep from being looked down on. With Chloe, none of that followed me into the room. So once I saw the difference, the choice wasn't hard. It wasn't even really a choice at all. I stopped chasing the loud version. I stopped mistaking pressure for love. I stopped handing my life to somebody who only knew how to measure it. And the minute I did that, my real life finally had room to begin.